Good God Almighty! Check one, two, check one. I can't hear a goddamn thing coming out of this guy, and in fact, it's super duper quiet. All right, hold on. Let me figure out what got fucked up here. I'll be right back. Damn microphone! What are you doing? All right, so that's fucking fine. Main output is there. Phones are there. Whoa. Check and make sure. Yeah, we're on the fucking RA20 fixture. Yeah. There we go. So why check one two, check one two, check one two, check one two. Why pop 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 Mike Ox. Yeah, something's fucking wrong with this guy. I don't know exactly what. All right, time to troubleshoot. Oh, I bet we got the wrong fucking microphone turned on. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, look at me here. Fucking troubleshooting and fixing these problems already. It was the wrong goddamn microphone. Don't I feel fucking embarrassed? And in fact, let me see. Let me scooch the fuck over. So I'm not all up on top of myself with my editing here. You can move there. Every morning, I gotta readjust this goddamn camera. There we go. Let's give Steve Jobs his, what's the dictionary for her? All right, so this is, hold on, let me turn on the restream chat so I can see what's happening here. This is our third day, not the first. I need to fix that fucking camera. But I believe it is our third day of editing on stream here. So my name is Zach, ZYZ. Then this is my 8th novel. I am not tremendously commercially successful, but I think the books are pretty fucking good. All right, so let me get, I'm seeing some chats coming through from Jordan O. I can't read it from here, so let me wait for this to pop the fuck up. Hold on, let me make some quick alterations to the studio. Yeah, we reconfigured the studio for this radio show I do on Friday nights. Most people haven't heard of it. And everything's like a little out of sorts. I'm a little out of sorts. I'm like fucking hungover from 2 Bud Lights and a bunch of margaritas. Which, yeah, let me tell you, it's real gamer fuel right there. Let me shrink myself and move some screens around so I can see y'all. Hold on, let me see. See, I like to, honestly, the chat has been pretty useful for yours truly, just in terms of seeing what people think and feel. And yeah, let me just open this in the fucking browser. There we go. So now I can see your chats and stuff. That's good. All right, so let me just test a chat. Do me a favor, and if you're watching this, just type something super duper profane in the chat. I just want to make sure that it works. Oh, that's right. This has to be flip-flopped this way to even see what the fuck is going on. All right, so I should be able to see your chats there. Well, the story thus far is that young Freya Jokla is getting her ass kicked by this other girl, Tammy Dowd. And in our prologue, we got into a extraterrestrial orb of some sort. Oh, shout out to Fancy Scientician right there, who says that we're good. If only you knew the truth. All right, it's going to drive me crazy if all these cameras are fucked up this way, so give me one sec. All right, let me get off of there. Chat. Browser. There we go. Which got knocked the fuck out. yeah, so everybody's out here making coffee and shit. Yeah, it's a big old D4. That's something to sit this on. Okay, cool. Now that should be good there. Oh, I didn't fix my fucking size. Whatever. This is the size I'm gonna be at. Okay. Yeah. So I'm doing a new editing procedure. Previously, when I would edit a novel, basically I would just do. My theory was I do one sort of rough draft of the novel, and then I do a first edit before I gave it to an editor to fix all the obvious fuck ups and so forth. And then yeah, I would do like a bunch of other minor edits after an editor got back to me. Well, at this point, I'm no longer part of a publishing company or whatever, and any editing that I get to this manuscript, I'm gonna have to fucking pay for. And editors work by the hour for the most part, if you get a good one. Some will work by the word, but I'm gonna. This is 197,000 words, so that's not good for me. Editing by the word here. So essentially, it's in my best interest if I get this manuscript in the best possible condition that I could be in before trying to get an editor to touch it. And in general, if you're trying to sell a book to an agent, the more polished you can get it on your own, the more chances an agent's going to take a fucking bite at it. I got to tell you, your chances are not good. Or what I think I tried recently to agent out this book, The Master Arcanist, which is a good fucking book. Like some of y'all might have read it there. That book is like fucking heartwarming. It's interesting. It's dope. There, if you've only read the first one, there are like 3 more volumes of it, and I cannot get an agent to take a whack at that for the life of me. Mostly because I don't know. You know, the wizard isn't a fucking transgender. The evil overlord that he's fighting against isn't like some orange rodeo clown. You know, it's just not topical enough for these motherfuckers. And at no point does anybody clarify their fucking pronoun in that book, which is a, you know, it's trouble. You got to do that these days. But no, honestly, I choose to believe that just the writing is not quite good enough yet for agents to be like, I gotta fucking sell this thing. And honestly, the only reason I want an agent anyway is I don't like dealing with contracts. Yeah, so recently I just went to like a publishing type event and felt so fucking out of place there. I couldn't find like a single person that I liked and wanted to be around and everything. And I was like, why would I want to get into business with these fucking, you know, I'm sure they're very nice people and everything, but they're not my people. You know what I mean? So anyhow, you know, like I love every part of making a book except for fucking marketing one, right? I love the writing. Like you can't see it from here, but I'm at full mast the entire time that I'm doing this. Just take my word for it. And outside of the tumescence, the writing is amazing. Even the editing is super fun. Like I know this is super boring to a lot of people, but I really enjoy this part of it. And then the next part of it, which is actually like laying out the words inside of the book, like getting the edit through and actually typesetting the book, is very zen and interesting to me. I like all the interior design. I like the cover design. I like every aspect of making a book, but oh Jesus. But thus far, I've not been tremendously commercially successful at it. But it doesn't really matter either way. I have my radio show. I have my day job. I could theoretically do this forever. My main problem thus far has just been, you know, the editing step is super expensive. So that's why I got you guys here. You're my eyes and ears. If you see me fucking something up or something doesn't make any sense, or I repeat a word, or just devolve into ethnic slur after ethnic slur, I need you in the chat to help me out here, because Lord knows I can't do it myself. Left to my own devices, this would swiftly devolve into hardcore erotica. And it's just not appropriate, especially given the age of the protagonists in this book. All right, well, with that said, let me stop dicking around and let's get down to it. Okay. I don't think we read this chapter yesterday. So just to recap again, what's happened thus far. Basically, in the first chapter, Freya is in the cafeteria sitting all alone. And this group of people comes up to her table and a guy tries to say hi to her. And she is just unintentionally quite rude to young Malcolm Lewis, who she had once dated. And she leaves the school and is about to skip and go home when Malcolm Lewis and this girl, Tammy Dowd, who you're going to see in this chapter, follow her out. And Tammy confronts her, and Freya just does not give a shit. You know, she can't rise herself to the attention. Backstory on Freya is that her father died about 3 months prior to the start of the story. We'll get into that in a little bit. But so Tammy winds up socking Freya right in the fucking eye. And instead of curling up in a ball and crying or fighting back or anything, Freya just sort of slumps onto the ground and lies there while it rains on her. And all the kids that are like bullying her just fuck off. And so she winds up being there in the rain for, it's not specified the amount of time in the book, but probably about 2 hours while it's just pissing down rain on her. And she is like about to get hypothermia before somebody spots her from an upstairs window and they come down and get her. And it's a big to-do. So my high school career was full of a lot of wonderful trips to the office. And none of them worked out quite like this. So I haven't been to high school in a long fucking time. Let me see. So Fancy Scientician said, I'm barely literate or I'd be happy to help. So Norton says that gravid equals pregnant in Danish. Gravid is also pregnant in English. Generally in English, it's a little bit of a different connotation. And I think the gravid that you're seeing in Danish, they share a common root word. In English, gravid is like we would generally describe like a sturgeon or a spider as being gravid if it was chock full of eggs. And just percolate on that one for a little bit. Let's get down to the editing. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to read aloud just about everything in this chapter, and then we'll make changes. And if there's time after that, we'll start working on the next chapter. The other reading aloud is mostly going to be silent. So there you can like turn on music or, I don't know, scream at the top of your lungs at your window at your next door neighbor. You can do whatever the fuck you want. There's nobody watching this. Nobody can tell us what to do. Hell yeah. Oh, shout outs to Miller and Fancy Scientician and all that there. Everybody in the chat. I'd like to steamroll this. If you can think of anybody who you would enjoy watching some creepy old man reading aloud a story that has not been published yet, let them know. Do your thing. Keep it live. All right. So, Freya and Tammy were sitting in the office in their gym clothes, waiting for their mothers. Officer Edwards, the school resource officer, I think I can take out the SRO. Yeah, so people won't know what an SRO is. Basically, nowadays, schools have like fucking police officers assigned to them, and they're called school resource officers. I don't know if this is apparently Spaethiwa is gravid with farts. Is that curry? Officer Edwards, the SRO, had dragged Cammy Dowd out of gym class without letting her dress out. She sat with her... that needs to be a period. She sat with her arms folded across her chest, sniffing angrily and clicking her tongue. Freya had to change out of her soaked Freya, okay, so we established. Okay. Let's see. Freya's clothes and shoes. Okay, so Freya's clothes and shoes were soaked. She was wearing a gym uniform and a set of shower... See, I don't... So it establishes up here that they're both in their gym clothes, but it doesn't establish why for Freya. Yeah. Yeah, that's... That's better. Freya had on her gym uniform and a set of shower shoes. Her regular clothes were soaked. They'd given her a blanket, but it was still a fight to keep her teeth from chattering. Initially, they'd wanted to take her to the hospital, but she kept insisting she was fine. It still seemed like they might make her go. So one thing that we're going to do in this rewrite there is women actually care about what clothes they're wearing for the most part. Not all women, but if we wanted to generalize, hey, like what's the difference between men and women? Women give like much more of a shit about clothes than men do. That's been my experience. If you don't feel the same way, feel free to let me know. And as I'm reading through this story, I want to establish more of what characters are wearing because I think it is important to this character who is kind of a stuck-up bitch, to tell you the truth. So actually, at some point, I want to bring in somebody who actually knows dick about fashion and have them design outfits for everybody in this fucking book. A fashion consultant for this. This is fucking ridiculous. But so Kevin John says, is Freya a lesbian? It's not going to be as white and black as any of that. To tell you the truth, you're all these characters are going to go through some difficult times in their life. Okay. It still seemed like they might make her go. Freya was supposed to be holding an ice pack over her eye. It was swollen, and the first signs that... See, it was swollen and about to be a really bad shiner. It was swollen, and the first signs of a really bad shiner were there. Yeah, what's the best way to say this? Yeah, so I don't want to have like some Sally sells seashells by the seashore type shit happening there. I have to read this at some point. So Freya was supposed to be holding an ice pack over her eye. She was going to have a real shiner, but she could still see out of it okay. The school nurse said he didn't think anything was broken. Okay, help me out there. I want to make sure the school nurse doesn't morph into a woman at some point here. I think the nurse might be a she later in the paragraph or in the chapter. Officer Edwards was filling out a form on his aluminum clipboard. Sitting next to him was the principal, Mr. Evers. Okay, Officer Edwards was filling out a form on his aluminum clipboard, and Mr. Evers, the principal, sat next to him at his desk. Nicholas Evers was an overweight man with a bald head and a fringe of salt and pepper hair just over his ears. He was one of those people who was perpetually smiling, but he wasn't smiling now. He was one of those people who was perpetually smiling, but he wasn't smiling now. He scowled at his own set of paperwork. Freya wondered how many trees would die for her getting punched out in the eye. See, that's whack. I don't know. I don't think that language tracks. I like that a little better. It took a ream of paper to get socked in the eye, apparently. Twice, Tammy tried to say something, Each time, Mr. Evers made a sound in his throat and stared her down. There was a notification ding from his phone. That's better. His phone dinged as someone messaged him. And then here we'd add, I don't know, like a marimba sound or something like that. Hold on. Apparently we fucked up the ice pack thing. Let's see. Freya was supposed to be holding an ice pack over her swollen eye. Oh yeah, that does track better. Well done, Spethiwa. Well done. Slight improvement. Yeah, we need swollen in there so people start thinking about their hard-ons at this time. Let's see. Let's see. Twice, Tammy tried to say something. Each time, Mr. Evers made a sound in his throat and stared her down. His phone dinged as someone messaged him. All right, your mothers are on their way, Mr. Evers said. He turned the form he'd been writing over on his, yeah. So there's a lot of people flipping things over. He turned the form face down on. I like that a little bit better. Okay, so, all right, your mothers are on their way, Mr. Evans said. He flipped the form face down and set his pen on top of it, and then looked from Tammy to Freya. Now, do you want to tell me what this is all about before they get here? Yeah, Shada said, not being able to retain an accent. I absolutely have to learn that skill. So yeah, I think you just gotta like peg a certain facial expression that somebody has. This guy's like, oh. No, do you want to tell me? That's awfully sounds like Mr. Belding from Saved by the Bell. Maybe I'll just impersonate Mr. Belding there. All right, your mothers are on their way, Mr. Evers said. He flipped the form face down and set his pen on top of it, then looked from Tammy to Freya. Now, do you want to tell me what this is about before they get here? This bitch hit me in the back of the head. I hit her back. It was self-defense. Stop. Mr. Evers held up a hand. I want to just say that she just darts in there with these words. Can I just use lied? Yeah, I wanna like get some of the desperation. Fibbed. No, that's not a fucking fib. She's just like a. Let's keep it at lied, and then we'll get back to it at some point when I have a better idea. Because I want to like capture the fact that she's like interjecting it quickly. You know how people will they'll just blab when they're fucking nervous. But blab also has the connotation of just spilling the fucking beans. And she's not. Oh, argued is not a. I like that right there. Argued. Yeah, that's a little bit better. And so argued is not quite right here. All right, I like that a little bit better. Freya rolled her eyes. It was so obvious. Okay, this bitch hit me in the back of the head. I hit her back. It was self-defense. Let's have that's self-defense. All right, cool. Freya rolled her eyes. Yeah, what's a word for just where you just like spit something out? There we go. So I want to capture some of her contempt. I do love the use of ejaculated, but I don't think we can get away with it in this context. Stop. Mr. Evers held out a hand. Don't use that language in this office again. Do you understand, young lady? Mr. Evers had raised his voice. Mr. Evers had raised his voice, and Tammy began to cry. Freya blinked. What did she have to cry about? She was really hamming it up, snuffing and sobbing. Okay, let's stop. Mr. Evers held up a hand. Don't use that language in this office again. Do you understand me, young lady? Mr. Evers had raised his voice. Yeah. I like that. When Mr. Evers raised his voice, Tammy began to cry. Freya blinked. What did Tammy have to cry about? Yeah, I like that better. She was really hamming it up, snuffing, snuffing. She was really hamming it up, snuffling and sobbing. Freya was glad she picked basketball and, uh, Freya blinked. What did Tammy have to cry about? She was really hamming it up, snuffling and sobbing. It was a good thing she tried out for basketball instead of drama. Oh, I like that. That's so ice cold in comparison to how clunky it was previously. Officer Ed pointed to the tissue box on the bookshelf beside their chairs. He could have handed it to her, but he didn't. I wouldn't either. Shout outs to you, Officer Ed. Fuck that bitch. Freya, are you with us? Oh, sorry. Freya realized that Mr. Evers had been asking her a direct question. She'd missed it. What did you ask? The principal had that troubled, what's wrong with you look she was so very sick of. Freya realized she needed to snap out of it if she didn't want to spend all day at Flying Horse Regional Hospital. Let's not have Flying Horse Regional Hospital. So I want to establish the name of the hospital. The sentence is a little overburdened, but I'm gonna just stick with it for now. It's useful to have the location established because that hospital will come up many a time. Better believe that. Freya realized she needed to snap out of it. She didn't want to spend all day at Flying Horse Regional Hospital. She clutched the hem of her shorts in her fist and clenched her teeth. Get it together. What happened here? If you don't feel up to talking, this can wait. I think she was just showing off. Okay, so what happened here? If you don't feel up to talking, this can wait, Officer Ed pressed, gently. What's a gentle word for press? What happened here? If you don't feel up to talking, this can wait, Officer Ed pressed, while offering her an out. She nodded in appreciation. I think she was just showing off for her friends. They followed me outside of the cafeteria. I didn't hit her back. She's lying. Quiet! Mr. Evers snapped, and Tammy flinched. Why were you lying on the ground in the rain? He asked. I didn't want to get up, Freya said. Mr. Evers' whole face scrunched up, and Freya knew she'd made a big mistake. She should have lied. At once his demeanor shifted. Mr. Edwards, could you take Tammy outside of the office, please? She's lying. She hit me first. She hit me first, Tammy kept repeating herself, as if that would make them believe her. She's lying. She hit me first. She hit me first. Tammy kept repeating herself, as if that would make them believe her. Officer Ed grabbed Tammy by the arm and hoisted her out of her seat. It seemed just as out of place as Mr. Evers' scowl. Normally, Officer Ed looked so placid and uninterested in everything. Now he was furious, dragging Tammy out of the office, and they could hear him barking orders at her through the door. When he returned, he took out his phone. Does that paragraph track poorly, or am I reading it poorly? Yes, I like it up to there. Officer Ed grabbed Tammy by the arm and hoisted her out of her seat. It seemed just as out of place. Yeah, okay, so that's why. Now he was... Okay, so Officer Ed grabbed Tammy by the arm and hoisted her out of the seat. The movement seemed as out of place as Mr. Evers' scowl. Officer Ed was normally so placid and uninterested in everything that didn't involve football. Now he was furious, dragging Tammy out of the office. They could hear him barking orders through the door. Now he was furious, dragging Tammy out of the office. Through the door, they could hear him barking orders at her. When he returned, he took out his phone. I'd like to take some pictures of your eye. Is that okay? Freya nodded, and he took several pictures from different angles. Does your mother have you seeing anyone, Freya? Mr. Evers asked. So I think when we voice this character, we'll just add some of the quality of uncertainty in his voice, and I think that'll go a long way towards differentiating him. So, like, we can just take Officer Ed and just make his voice a little round, like, he's kind of macho and doesn't really give a shit, but he does care about her. I don't know, maybe I'll work on like a Maine accent or something for some of these towny type people. But Mr. Evers should just have some uncertainty as a critical part of his character. Does your mother have you seeing anyone, Freya? Mr. Evers asked. I have guitar lessons on Sundays, Freya said, not sure what he was asking. I mean like someone you can talk to, a therapist or a psychiatrist, Mr. Evers explained. Her cheeks grew a little hot with embarrassment. Yeah, they don't grow a little hot. They are hot with embarrassment. Her cheeks grew hot with embarrassment. Of course he didn't mean guitar lessons. Oh, no, not since about a month after. And that was just for having trouble sleeping. Are you still having trouble? No, they gave me Lunesta. It's good. Would you like to talk with someone else about it? I really don't. Is this about me lying down? Yeah, I was just hurt. It's no big deal. It is a big deal. I promise you. My mother died when I was just a little older than you. I was 22. I know that seems like a long way off, but it's not. I'm sorry, Freya said, her voice... No, I'm sorry, Freya said, her voice flat. She didn't like it when people tried to relate. When my mother died, I had to go to the parish priest every night for 2 weeks. I cried and cried. I felt like nothing would ever fill the place where she was missing. Okay, so that's there. I felt like nothing would ever fill the place where she was missing. If it hadn't been for Father Fry, I don't know what I would have done. Mr. Evers looked at her very closely after he spoke. Looked at her. Okay. When my mother died, I had to go to the parish priest every night for 2 weeks. I cried and cried. I felt like nothing would ever fill the place where she was missing. See, I don't think somebody would actually say, I felt like nothing would ever fill the place where she was missing. It's not a way that people talk. I felt like nothing would ever fill that emptiness. That's a little better. So DS Former says, I pop Adderall. Oh, yeah, all right. Let's get into this chat right here. So DS Former is saying, is this League? No, I'm live editing this novel. It is an adult novel for adults. It's not pornographic, although there is a lot of fucking in it. So Impulse Filters says that Lunesta always gave me a metallic taste in my mouth in the morning. Oh, that's super cool. I can really use that because she's on Lunesta for the first part of this whole thing, and it may become more of a plot element there. So people are popping Adderall to stay focused. There shouldn't be sexual undertones yet, but God, I'm gonna get banned from Twitch once we get a little bit into this here. Okay. So, but yeah, thanks for hopping onto this, right? Yeah, Jordan, I will definitely ask you about Lunesta, especially if there was withdrawal associated with it when you stopped taking it. But we'll get into that maybe like 4 or 5 chapters in. See how that looked to look forward to. So, when my mother died, I had to go to the parish priest every night for 2 weeks. I cried and cried. I felt like nothing would ever fill the emptiness. You know, if it hadn't been for Father Fry, I don't know what I would have done. Yeah, okay, so we don't put at the front because we have the word no a little bit later. If it hadn't been for Father Fry, I don't know what I would have done. Mr. Evers looked at her very closely after he spoke. We don't go to church, Freya said. I know, Mr. Evers said. She could tell he didn't like that. She could see him begin to speak. So not 2 she's. He began to speak, and then he stopped himself, like there was something he wanted to say, but couldn't. There was a shout from outside the office, and Mr. Evers looked at Officer Ed, who nodded and went out. Okay. Let's see. There was a shout from outside the office, and Mr. Evers looked at Officer Ed. Investigate. I guess he's a police officer. I can use that. There was a shout from outside the office. Mr. Evers nodded to Officer Ed, who went out to investigate. Am I going to get in trouble? Freya asked. I could hear talking outside. Am I going to get in trouble? Freya asked. She didn't want them to suspend her. She dreaded the idea of being stuck at home all day with nothing to do. No. I haven't looked at the security camera footage yet, but I'm pretty sure of what I'm going to see when I get it. I believe you didn't start this. Okay. We don't need that. Look at that. We're We're almost down to under 197,000 words here. Just 9:15 to go in this cut. I believe you didn't start this. So here's a point where I could make her continue to be afraid that something will happen to her here. But generally, I think the administration is relatively sympathetic to her throughout the whole deal. So we'll have to look into that. They could hear Officer Ed through the office door, talking patiently in his keep the peace voice. Yeah, I don't want her to thank him because she's a little bit of an ungrateful bitch. They could hear Officer Ed talking through the office door. They could hear Officer Ed through the office door, talking patiently in his keep the peace voice. All right, I like that. You don't have to get Tammy in trouble. I'm fine. I just want her to stop bothering me, Freya said, but Mr. Evers shook his head. I'm going to recommend the school board expel Tammy from Grayson and move her to an alternative school. All the students who are with her will be suspended. Oh, no. That makes it much worse for me. Everybody will be mad at me. Already Freya could see how it was going to go. She would shift from the ranks of the barely tolerated into the untouchables. She had picked the worst possible way to deal with this. Nice. That makes it much worse for me. Everybody will be mad at me, Freya protested. Okay, so just a general note. In terms of the speech here, her speech should be sort of slightly more exact than other people's, and just borderline on like this kind of like precocious, semi-autistic tone, where the way that she talks is like a little bit highfalutin in comparison to other characters. And so that's one where we're going to work on it now, but really we would do like a consistency edit to make sure that her voice is consistent throughout. So if you're watching this critically, and just, I'm saying this so that I remember some of this, but if we're watching this critically, that's what we're looking for. We want her to talk like a fucking nerd. Okay, so already Freya could see how it was going to go. She would shift from the ranks of the barely tolerated into the untouchables. She had picked the worst possible way to deal with this. We don't have a choice. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Oh, okay, I'm sorry should be first. I'm sorry, Freya. We don't have a choice. For a while, the kids who get suspended may be a problem. If any of them bother you, you need to come to me right away. We need to stop the problem before it gets out of hand. Did Tammy bully you before? Oh, shit. Oh, illegal edit in progress. Cops coming. Silence, he says. A woman's mouth is not for the exiting of words, but for the entrance of a man's... And then there's an ellipses, and then dick. I don't know, the ellipses kind of undermines the dom sub thing that you're going for here, deformer. But shout outs to the fiction occurring in the chat while we're working on fiction here. This is getting really meta. I love it. Did Tammy bully you before this? She just shoved me some in the halls and called me a cunt. I didn't care. I ignored her. I need you to tell me if something like that happens again. Please. I don't want to, but if I know you don't want to. No, this is clunky. If I had heard about this earlier, maybe we could have stopped all this. Oh, that's a quote from It's Always Sunny. Nice. Nice. That's my favorite. It's Always Sunny. I like when they all get addicted to crack. It's a solid episode. That humor is like a little bit too awkward for me for the most part, but the characters are just so unrelatable and awful, each and every one of them. It's okay to hate them. God, Danny DeVito, what a fucking pimp. He's an absolute genius. All right, what do we got here? She just shoved me some in the halls and called me a cunt. I didn't care. I ignored her. I need you to tell me right away if something like that happens again. Please. If I had heard about this earlier... I need you to tell me right away if something like that happens again. Please. If I had heard about this earlier, we might not be in this position. Freya stared forward for too many beats. She realized he was expecting a response. Okay, she said. It wouldn't have stopped anything, but she wanted this to be over. There was more shouting from outside the office, and Freya recognized Lasse's voice. She went rigid. It was a corner office, There was more shouting from outside the office, and Freya recognized Lasse's voice. She went rigid. Went rigid sounds like she's a fucking hard on right there. I want like. Her body locked up. The principal's office was in a corner of the building. There was no way out. She stared out of the clouds over the rolling hills and shut her eyes, but the world stubbornly refused to blink away. The principal's office was in a corner of the building with big windows that overlooked the valley. There was no way out. She stared out at the cloud. Freya stared at the clouds. Freya stared out at the clouds and the fog drifting over the hills and shut her eyes, but the world stubbornly refused to blink away. She'd asked them not to call Lasse and said she couldn't answer the phone at work, but they wouldn't listen to her. The sharp sound. All right. Set like concrete is so I like where you're going with that, but I think it's too big of an image to like fit in there. I think you can get away with that like once in a chapter, and I think I already expend a lot of my budget for that kind of shit earlier in the chapter. But yeah, maybe I could use that later. I like the part about I have another book called I haven't published this one yet either, but it's called Lemon Maybe and the Electric Lady. And one of my favorite images in the entire book is it's talking about these old punk rocker guys that hang out in a bar, and it talks about how they've been there so long that their bone or their flesh had hardened into concrete and their bones had turned into rebar. And when they stood up at the end of the night, it sounded like a string of firecrackers going off. Like crack, pop, pop, pop. Oh, I fucking love that. I gotta publish that fucking book. That one needs a rewrite too. That'll be our next rewrite. Using this exact same editing method because I love it. So far, I like having a bunch of people watching me jack my dick here. So the sharp sound of voices outside got Mr. Evers out of his desk in a hurry. Officer Ed was standing between Lasse and Tammy's mother, Patricia. Patricia's mother was yelling, while Freya's mother was speaking in the short, clip way she did when she was angry. Lasse turned towards the office and saw Freya. Her mouth fell open. Hmm. Lasse had a Karen haircut, buzzed on one side with a swoop of black hair on the left. Her eyes were pilot light blue, burning with anger. That's a little hokey, but I'm gonna leave it in there. Maybe I can get it past an editor. What y'all think? That too fucking hokey? Oh, shout outs to Logic. Real talk. Let me see. Lassa had a Karen haircut. Buzzed on one side. Yeah, which way did Hitler sweep his hair? Was it left or right? Yeah, let's have it buzz on the right. I'm not saying that her mother is Hitler, and in fact she's Finnish, so she's fought a wonderful war against young Hitler. Wait, the Finns hook up with the Nazis? Oh, why can't I fucking remember? I know Norway went full on Nazi. Help me out here, history buffs. I want to say, yeah, they probably Nazified significantly to deal with them old Ruskies. Freya's mother had a Karen haircut, buzzed on the right with a swoop of black hair to the left. Her eyes were pilot light blue, burning with anger. All right, maybe I can get away with that. I think it's a little fucking much, but that's the only mouth fell open that we've had in the first 3 chapters. Hopefully, I don't want people just like all the fucking time in this story. So let's work on this again. Much better. Okay. There's more shouting from outside the office, and Freya they're not quite shouting. There's more talking from outside the office, and Freya recognized Lassa's voice. So let's tone it down here so they're not shouting right away. Where did they start talking? Okay, so there's one shout, but they're not like in a full on argument. Yeah, I hope that you can just call it a fucking Karen haircut and people will understand that that's exactly what's going on there. But that is the haircut that she has there. Not to be too cliche, but that's an interesting character. In the rewrite, a lot of things need to happen with the Lassa character to justify some of the decisions that she makes later in the book. Most of this rewrite is just we're fixing the language, but more so the motivation of the characters is like really the important part. Okay, there's more talking from outside the office, and Freya recognized Lassa's voice. Her body locked up. The principal's office was in a corner of the building with big windows that overlooked the valley. There was no way out. Freya stared at the clouds and the fog drifting over the hills and shut her eyes tightly, but the world stubbornly refused to blink away. She'd asked them not to call Lassa, but they wouldn't listen. Oh, yeah. She'd asked them not to call Lassa, but they wouldn't listen to her. Mr. Evers was watching her response, looking unhappily. He looked troubled. The voices outside the office rose sharply, and he got out of his seat and out the door in a hurry. Okay, that's better. Freya followed him. After a few moments, Freya followed him. Officer Ed was standing between Lassa and Tammy's mother, Patricia. Patricia was yelling, while Freya was speaking in the short, clipped way. Okay, yeah, this is garbage. Patricia was yelling. Patricia was almost yelling, while Lassa spoke in the... Freya's voice... Patricia was almost yelling. Okay. Oh, I like that so much. Officer Ed was standing between Lassa and Tammy's mother, Patricia. Patricia was nearly yelling. Yeah. Patricia was almost yelling in her face. Lassa's voice was low and clipped. Her accent got thicker when she was mad. The two women couldn't have been more different. Patricia was massive and slow. Lassa was wiry and alive with tension. Patricia was massive and slow-moving. Lassa was wiry and alive with tension. Freya's mother had a Karen haircut, buzzed on the right with a swoop of black hair to the left. Her eyes were pilot-light blue, burning with anger. When she saw Freya, her mouth fell open. So this is a spot where maybe we can have something about what she's wearing. What kind of suit would she wear? Is it Maladrino? I work for this motherfucker. Patricia wore a hoodie's not quite right. Mm. Lassa wore a navy Maladrino pantsuit. Patricia, a shapeless dress that looked like it had been pulled out of a pile of laundry. Patricia. I don't want to get too into this right here because it's fun to have details, but they do break up the tension. Lassa's voice was slow and clipped. Her accent got thicker when she was mad. The two women couldn't have been more different. Lassa wore a navy Maladrino pantsuit. Patricia, a shapeless dress that looked like it had been pulled out of a pile of laundry. Lassa's movements were wire. Yeah. Uh, what do I want? Where she's like fucking humming with tension. Slow moving. Yeah. This is a bad sentence. Just to get off of it. Mm. Yeah, let's take out the part about them being wiry. Okay. Yeah, I think we get into how fat Patricia Dowd is a little bit later here. God, tough fucking paragraph there. Officer Ed was standing between Lassa and Tammy's mother, Patricia. Patricia was almost yelling in her face. Lassa's voice was low and clipped. Her accent got thicker when she was mad. The two women couldn't have been more different. Lassa wore a navy Maladrino pantsuit. Patricia, a shapeless dress that looked like it had been pulled out of a pile of laundry. Freya's mother had a Karen haircut, buzzed on the right with a swoop of black hair to the left. Her eyes were pilot light blue, burning with anger. When she saw Freya, her mouth fell open. "Oh my God," she said. That's, oh my God. That's, let me get that dialect coach in there. to sort some of the shit. Because good God Almighty, that's ridiculous. How am I going to do a Finnish accent? I need to start dating a Finnish woman. Can I really start dating a Finnish woman just to get the fucking accent down? How? That seems reprehensible to me, but I'll probably do it. I don't know. Maybe I'll just make a Finn friend. Oh my God, she said. And she rushed forward and grabbed Freya. Are you okay? Oh my God. I'm fine, Freya said, unable to meet her stare. Lasse's gaze was like being caught in an electric current. So it's a little much to have both Pilot Light Blue and Burning with Anger. Whatever. Lasse's gaze was like being caught in an electric current. When she was upset, Lasse's gaze was like being caught in an electric current. See? She says she's fine, Tammy's mother shouted. Patricia, so here's a note about, so I did go through a course on narration. I'm obviously not super good at it. I'm going to need a lot of practice to get down with it. But a critical thing is that when a character is shouting, it's very natural to like raise your voice like I'm doing right here. But you're really not meant to shout into the microphone like that. It's much more, you should try to retain a consistent volume throughout and just do the shout through emphasis. Like, see? She says she's fine, Tammy's mother shouted. Patricia Dowd was one of those people whose normal speaking voice was almost a shout. Her volume had been steadily increasing since she'd entered the office. Lasse turned back to her, and Freya couldn't understand why Mrs. Dowd wasn't running away. All the warning signs were there, the stiff posture, the Finnish accent getting thicker, the fire in her eyes. There was a look on Lasse's face that Freya hadn't seen in a long time, but she had never forgotten it. Like nothing else today, her mother's fury touched her. That look meant someone was going to get hurt. Okay, so we have a little bit of repetition between here and here. Let's take out Burning with Anger, because that's too much, right? I do like Pilot Light Blue. I think we can get away with that if we take out the anger part. So here is where we could put in Mida Helveta, which is like, what the cunt? Yeah. That's something we could do later, but this is where she, yeah, let's comment this. And let's change the author for this. Now, what's that fucking key command that I'm always... on the... I think it's like Command Shift. Oh, I can't fucking get it. So I should change the author for these comments. But here is a good spot to... Yeah, I love that they're like, what the fuck is what the cunt. Cunt is like their fuck, which is amazing. I'm fine, Freya said, unable to meet her stare. When she was upset, Lasse's gaze was like being caught in an electric current. I like that. I don't want to take that away. See? She says she's fine, Tammy's mother shouted. Patricia Dowd was one of those people whose normal speaking voice was almost a shout. Her volume had been steadily increasing since she'd entered the office. Lasse wheeled back on her, and Freya couldn't understand why Mrs. Dowd wasn't running away. Lasse wheeled back towards her, and Freya couldn't understand why Mrs. Dowd wasn't running away. All the warning signs were there. The stiff posture, the Finnish accent getting thicker, the fire in her eyes. There was a look on Lasse's face that Freya hadn't seen in a long time, but she had never forgotten it. Like nothing else today, her mother's fury touched her. That look meant someone was getting hurt. Oh, okay. I like that. That's a little bit much, and it would probably benefit from somebody who's not me working on it a little bit there. So, Lassa let go of Freya's shoulders. Patricia Dowd stood there. No, we don't need the word there. Patricia Dowd stood with her hands on her hips, ready for her to say something. Freya had seen Tammy make the exact same posture. She was ready to get into a shouting match with Lassa, but Lassa didn't shout. Lassa let go of Freya's shoulders. Patricia Dowd, yeah, she's not holding her shoulders there. She had already wheeled back on her. Yeah, we can just take out that fucking sentence there. It's probably a relic from a edit long before, in the land before time. Patricia Dowd stood with her hands on her hips, ready for her to say something. Freya had seen Tammy make the exact same posture. She was ready to get into a shouting match with Lassa. But Lassa didn't shout. She didn't say anything. She bent down, and then as fast as a spring uncoiling, she tackled the other woman. Let's do it like that. But Lassa didn't shout. She didn't say anything. She bent down, and then as fast as a spring uncoiling, she leapt at her in a flying tackle. Patricia Dowd fell backwards onto the tiles with a heavy thump. Her shout became a squeal of surprise. Surprise is not... Oh shit, logic. Yeah, I wasn't just gonna fucking, have them dicking around with their feelings this whole time. Squeal of surprise, or shout, yeah, we can just take out of surprise there. Her shout became a squeal. That's right, Piggy. For a moment, it was almost funny. Patricia was at least twice Lassa's size, but she spilled onto the floor. Okay. Patricia was twice Lassa's size, but she spilled onto the floor like a Jenga tower. It wasn't funny for long. But she spilled onto the floor like a Jenga tower and shrieked with anger. It wasn't funny for long. Mad as fuck, like, to bring down it. No, we'll get there. We'll get there. Hold up. For a moment, it was almost funny. Patricia was... It wasn't funny. The levity was brief. Lassa scrambled on top of Patricia Dowd and planted her knees on the big woman's shoulders, and then... Lassa scrambled on top of Patricia Dowd. Yo, you ever have somebody fucking do this to you? It is awful. You never want to have somebody's knees on your shoulders, man. You can't get your arms up at all. So Lassa scrambled on top of Patricia Dowd and pinned her arms with her knees on the big woman's shoulders. She rained down strikes with the hams of her fists, mashing her face like a ball of dough. Patricia couldn't get her hands up to defend herself. She was trying to lift her head. Yeah. God, that would hurt so fucking bad, man. All right, so let's let's get into that. So Lassa scrambled on top of Patricia Dowd and pinned her arms with her knees on the big woman's shoulders. Without hesitation, she rained down. See, there needs to be a transition between the two. Immediately, she was raining down strikes with the hams of her fist, mashing Patricia's face like a ball of dough. Unable to defend herself, Patricia was trying to lift her head, and Lassa's strikes were bouncing the back of her head against the polished concrete floor. It all happened so quickly that even Officer Ed was stunned. By the time he got behind Lassa and pulled her off, Patricia's nose was shattered and blood was flowing freely. As she was yanked away, Lassa snuck in a final stomp, catching Patricia solidly in the stomach. The woman gave... yeah, let's do Patricia. Patricia gave a wretched gasp as all the wind was driven out of her. She began to choke and then managed to roll over to her side and threw up. The awful stink of vomit quickly filled the small room. Yeah, we don't need that. Yeah. There we go. She began to choke and then she managed to roll over to her side. The awful stink of vomit quickly filled the small room. Everything was a jumble of confusion. Tammy was wailing. Mr. Evers was trying to make sure Patricia was still breathing, and he kept gagging. Patricia wouldn't get up. She was gasping for breath and crying. She looked like she'd gone 10 rounds in 10 seconds. Oh, I love that. Everything was a jumble of confusion. Tammy was wailing. Mr. Evers was trying to make sure that Patricia was still breathing and fighting. Tammy was wailing. Yeah. Mr. Evers fought to keep from gagging. Patricia couldn't get up. She was gasping for breath and crying. She looked like she'd gone 10 rounds in 10 seconds. "I'm done," Lassa said, though her chest was rising and falling hard, and her whole face was red and gleaming with sweat. Freya stared at her, stunned. Lassa was smiling. Freya couldn't look away. Lassa was smiling. Freya could see the hint of a smile on her face. Freya could see the hint of a smile beneath the exertion. "I'm going to put you in handcuffs, okay? I'm going to put you against the wall here. When I let go, you put your hands behind your back. Understand?" That is a little how a cop would talk. Hold on, let's try and get this. "I'm going to put you in handcuffs, okay? I'm going to put you against the wall here, and when I let go, you put your hands behind your back. And when I let go..." Yeah, cops love to say, "Do you understand?" All right. "I'm going to put you in handcuffs, okay? I'm going to put you against this wall here, and when I let you go, you put your hands behind your back. Do you understand?" "I understand," Freya's mother said. Her voice cold and at odds. Oh, there we go. I understand, Lassa said. Her voice was dispassionate, at odds with the excitement on her face. The danger had passed. Freya watched Officer Ed put her mother in handcuffs. It was some time before Mr. Edwards could get Patricia Dowd to her feet. She could barely stand. Your hands together behind your back with your palms faced. Oh, that's a good fucking logic, man. Hell yeah. That's... Yeah, that is an amazing fucking note right there. They do that. I never... It's been a long time since I've been handcuffed, to tell you the truth. It was, God, how many years ago was that? I want to say I have not been in handcuffs in like 17 years. But that sounds exactly right there. What a G. Hell yeah. All right, let's do that again. I'm going to put you in handcuffs, okay? I'm going to put you against the wall here. And when I let you go, you put your hands behind your back with your palms facing outward. Do you understand? Yeah, I think me is appropriate there. Misadventures. Well, you know, that's how we got here. You know what I mean? Had to start there to get here. I don't know. Maybe some of us are still there. You know what I'm saying? I understand, Lassa said. Her voice was dispassionate, at odds with the excitement on her face. The danger had passed. Freya watched Officer Ed put her mother in handcuffs. It was some time before Mr. Edwards could get Patricia Dowd on her feet. It was some time before Mr. Evers could get Patricia Dowd on her feet. I'm very sorry. There we go. Oh, I like that. That's a 2-for-1 there. Last time I was in cuffs was September of last year. Shoutouts to Jordan O right there. I'm sure that some kind of alcohol was involved in that one. I'm very sorry. I just saw my child was hurt, and I snapped, Lassa said. She didn't sound very sorry at all. There was a sudden hate in Patricia's eyes. I'm going to sue you all. I'm going to sue you. No, I think... Patricia Dowd honks something about a lawsuit. See, this is just me being lazy. Patricia Dowd honks something about a lawsuit, her voice all choked with blood. Good luck, Lassa said, still smiling. What a cunt. Tore up from the floor up. Oh, I'm loving it. I wish I could use that. But none of these characters would say tore up from the floor up. Let me make a note to use that for later. Good luck, Lassa said, still smiling. Patricia lost it. She stomped forward and slapped Lassa with a crack as loud as a whip. Ah! What's up, bitch? Hey! Hey! Officer Ed shouted. For a moment, his attention was diverted from holding Lassa's cuffs. There was a second crack, and then Patricia Dowd was suddenly on the floor again. Everyone was confused. It took a moment for Freya to realize Lassa had headbutted Patricia. There was an angry red spot just below her mother's hairline and an animal look on her face. Officer Ed could barely hold on to the handcuffs. Freya was certain if the policeman wasn't holding her back, Lassa would... Okay, we need to have her... Yeah, he's not holding her by the cuffs. They don't fucking do that. But, okay. Hey, hey, Officer Ed shouted. For a moment, his attention was diverted from Lassa. There was a second crowd, and then Patricia Dowd was suddenly on the floor again. Everyone was confused. It took a moment for Freya to realize that Lassa had headbutted Patricia. There was an angry red spot just below her mother's hairline and an animal look on her face. Officer Ed, There was an angry red spot just below her mother's hairline and an animal look on her face. Officer Ed grabbed her and struggled to hold on. Freya was certain if the policeman wasn't holding her back, Lassa would kill Patricia Dowd. I wasn't there. Hell yeah. Take her in your office, Officer Ed commanded Mr. Evers. Get her in the office, Mr. Evers commanded. His principal's, I think principal's office is, they cordoned her in the principal's office. Okay, so after a few moments, Lassa snapped out of it and became compliant. They cordoned her in the principal's office. Officer Ed struggled to get Patricia to sit up so he could handcuff her too, but she was too heavy. He left her on the ground. For now. He left her on the ground, but she was too heavy. She do MMA or something? Officer Ed motioned towards the closed door of the principal's office. It took Freya a moment to understand he was asking her. She does yoga, Freya said, and he gave her an incredulous look. Oh, I mean she used to be in the army. In Finland, Freya added. Wow, Jesus. Mrs. Dowd, can you sit up, please? He finally got Patricia Dowd to sit up. She'd fallen in vomit, and she was a complete mess. Her eyes wouldn't focus. After she was in handcuffs, Officer Ed got on his radio and called for 2 squad cars and an ambulance. In a string of police jargon, he explained what had happened. Freya realized that everyone here was about to go to jail. Can I... She motioned to the principal's office, and Officer Ed nodded. Behind the closed door, Lasse was upset, on the verge of tears. I'm sorry, Freya. I don't know what came over me, Lasse said, and that was a lie. She knew exactly what had come over her. She was just putting on a show for Mr. Evers. Freya didn't know what to say. It's okay, was all she could think of. Can you call Paul and ask him to bail me out? Freya squinted, but nodded her head. She didn't like Paul. She hadn't liked any of her mother's new boyfriends. We have to get child services involved, Mrs. Jokla, Mr. Evers said. For a moment, Lasse looked like she might headbutt him too, but then her face fell and she began to cry for real. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that. Is there a relative Freya can stay with tonight? My friend Paul will take care of everything. My ex, I don't like that fucking... I don't think too many people actually talk like that ever. Like where there's a fucking hyphen in between 2 words. People do it all the time in dialogue, but... My friend Paul will take care of everything, she said. There's no blood relative nearby? No one. Mr. Evers hesitated, but then nodded. Okay, well, this is a tough situation we have here. I think it might be best if Freya stayed home for a few days. I don't want to, Freya interjected. I didn't do anything wrong. I shouldn't get punished. This isn't a disciplinary action. It's just for a few days, until things cool off. You won't be marked absent. I'm going to speak with everyone in that pack of kids and make it clear that anyone who takes this further will be expelled. Freya looked at her mother. There was a red mark on her cheek where she'd been slapped and an angry welt on her forehead where she'd headbutted Patricia Dowd senseless. What's going to happen? She looked worried. What's going to happen? Lasse asked. The tears had been very brief. Again, she'd gone cold and turned to the business of the situation. So it may be a little bit overstated, but I like the idea of Patricia just fucking snapping in and out, or not Patricia, of Lasse just sort of snapping in and out of these things. It's really going to be kind of core to the coldness of that character throughout the story. I'm going to ask Freya to stay home until next week. We'll have her schoolwork sent to her so she won't fall behind. Child Services will most likely interview you and Freya. They'll come to take a look at your home. Please make sure it's in good shape. Freya snorted, and Mr. Evers looked at her. Looked up at her. It's nothing, Freya said. Okay, that's foreshadowing something that happens a little bit later, so it doesn't have to make total sense right now. I'm going to ask Freya to stay home until next week. We'll have her schoolwork sent to her so she won't fall behind. Child Services will most likely interview you and Freya. They'll come and take a look at your home. Please make sure it's in good shape. Freya snorted, and Mr. Evers turned his head. It's nothing, Freya said. Freya waved it away. I'm going to recommend that Freya see a therapist. Mr. Evers sounded like he'd said all this 100 times before. Maybe he had. Lasse nodded. I will get her one. I will get her one. I will get her one. Lasse Brown. That sentence feels like a little awkward, and it might be a good place to sort of interject some kind of like linguistic peccadillo, but I just don't have one in the tank right here. Maybe we'll come back to that later. You and Miss Dowd will be charged with battery. You and Miss Dowd will both be charged with battery. If both of you work with the judge, maybe you can get charges reduced. I will try to help, but if Miss Dowd does file a lawsuit, this will all be out of my hands. Okay. You'll probably both be charged with battery. Maybe you can work with the police and get the charges reduced. I'll try to help, but if a lawsuit is filed, this will all be out of my hands. What about the girl that hit Freya? This isn't the first problem we've had with that student. I'm going to recommend expulsion. Good. I have to ask you, Freya, do you feel safe going home tonight? Are you okay? I'm okay. I'm sorry about all this, Freya said. Things had gotten so much worse in a single afternoon. This isn't your fault, Freya, Mr. Evers said. He looked despondent. I'm still sorry. Bum, 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 bum. So that's chapter 2 of GRAVID by Zach ZYZ. 1111 Blaze It. Shout outs to Jordan O. Some great fucking comments there from Spathywa and Jordan O and Logic. Thank you for joining me on this journey, man. This is not something that a lot of people are interested in or would get onto, but I mean, this is honestly like my life's fucking work, as janky as it all is. And I cannot tell you how much I appreciate having y'all on this fucking crazy journey with me. So we're going to get to chapter 3, and things are going to get kind of hectic. I think I'm going to stop for right now. I'm about out of mana, and it's a Saturday. You know, we did the show last night. But yeah, thank you for joining me. And I'm going to do this every day until this novel is completed. We're on chapter 3, which means we just have 97 chapters to go. Hell yeah. 1111 Blaze It. All right, so thank you all. And I got to come up with a catchphrase for the end of these streams that isn't penis pump. But I'll catch y'all all tomorrow. I don't know. Maybe we'll do some shit later tonight. Peace.